Hey everyone, I'm Andy Raffel from eTechnics.com, and today we're going to be looking at the ASUS Strix Scope. Or is it the Strix Control? Control? Let's take a look. Now, we first saw this keyboard at CES 2019, but it went by a slightly different name. It was actually called the ROG Strix Control, or Control. If you get that reference, you'll know exactly what I mean. But they decided to change it to the ROG Strix Scope instead. Now, the reason it was actually going to be called the Control was due to the oversized control key in the bottom left. Now, they've done this for one primary reason. This keyboard is actually aimed at FPS gamers. And for anyone who plays FPS games, you'll know exactly how difficult it can be just trying to sort of reach over with your pinky finger to that control button. This is especially handy when you're doing things like crouching, walking, or even laying down. And this all comes down to what ASUS are calling the X-accurate design, or X-accurate, I'm not even sure with this one. But it means that you're also less likely to hit the Windows key. Now, there are another kind of couple of key features with this keyboard before we delve into it that I want to talk about. And one of them is also the quick toggle key. Now, this allows you to kind of easily switch between function and media keys. And there's also a stealth key which hides all your apps and mutes the audio. Now, I'm going to refer to this, I think, as the pornography key because, come on, that's what it's going to be used for, right? Bow, chicka, bow, wow. Now, as we know with ASUS, they are sort of firm believers in their collaboration that they have with Cherry. Now, this particular keyboard comes with the Cherry MX RGB reds, but you do get a choice. So it's entirely up to you. You can go with the reds, the brown, the blue, the black, the speed silver, or the silent red, depending on your needs. Now, pricing on this one's a bit tricky. We haven't actually been told too much, but we have managed to find it on a European website. I believe it's a French retailer for 180 euros. So that's probably going to translate to about the same in pounds. Dollars, it could go either way with the way that the market's going at the moment. So let's talk about what you actually get inside. So inside, to start with, there's a quick start guide. There's also 2 Republica Gamers stickers, and probably the most key important thing here, get it, key, is the spare W, A, S and D keys. Now, on closer inspection, they do have a slightly different profile, and some people might believe that this gives them a competitive edge, but they probably don't. But in all honesty, they look pretty cool, so I'll give them that. Now, dimensions of this keyboard come in at 440 by 137 by 39 millimeters, and with the cable included, it comes in at 1070 grams. Now, the key thing about this keyboard, I think, is going to come down to the styling. It's actually really, really nice. So it's kind of separated into 2 halves. So on the left half, we have kind of a sandblasted black surface, whereas on the right-hand side has a slightly more premium feeling with a brushed aluminium, and the 2 halves are actually separated by the ROG slash that we've kind of, grown accustomed to on their laptops and other gaming peripherals. In terms of branding, they've actually gone quite subtle on this. So there's branding in the bottom left and the RGB branding on the top right. It's also worth mentioning that the underside is patterned nicely with some extra branding as well. Obviously, you're not going to see this, but it is just, a nice little touch that they didn't really have to do, but I'm glad to see it. Now, in terms of build quality, this is something that is, I guess, subjective when it comes to a keyboard, but I actually really like the build quality of this. Even when you're kind of trying to twist it and bash it about a little bit, it does sort of hold up on its own. And I think a lot of this comes down to the aluminium sort of plate that's on the top. Another thing that I really do like is the cable routing option actually underneath the keyboard. If you don't want a long sort of draping wire, you can just kind of easily tuck it away. And I'm really glad that they've actually thought about this. Talking about the cable, another kind of, premium feature, I guess you'd class it as, is the fact that it's a 1.8 meter braided fiber cable. So not only is it a good length, it actually really has that kind of durability, which I guess we've, grown to love with ASUS and their ROG range of products. Now, buying a keyboard is one thing. The main aspect is going to be when it comes to customization, and you'd be pleased to know that with this keyboard there's quite a few options you can actually do with it. Obviously, there's the different types of keys that you can get, so that's one way of looking at it, but the other thing is things like on-the-fly macro recording. So yes, you can do that, which is extremely useful when you look at if you're playing MMO games and that type of thing. You can also quickly map the command sequences to selected keys, just giving you, I guess, that extra versatility with it. You can adjust all the settings with the Enhanced Armory 2 software, and you can also store your profiles using the onboard memory. Now, it's worth noting that you can store up to 6 profiles, including up to 5 custom schemes, and you can use them anytime, anywhere. The Armory 2 software lets you tune everything to your gameplay and your needs. So this includes everything from creating profiles, custom colors and effects, mapping keys and recording macros like we spoke about, and much more. Now you can also actually track your hardware stats as well. So if you are maybe, into competitive gaming, you're using this, and maybe you're finding that you're not using certain keys as much as you think you should be, you can actually see exactly how many times you've pressed that particular key. Quite handy, I'm sure you'll agree. Now another element of obviously customization comes down to RGB. Yes, some people are going to love it, some people are going to hate it. Personally, I like it. It gives you kind of full flexibility over what you want to do. You don't have to have it puking rainbows all the time. You can stick to one solid color if that's what you want. Obviously, I'd go for maybe an eTechnics blue. What would you go for? But with that, obviously everything is controlled either through the Armory 2 software or Aura Sync. Yes, this is Aura compatible, so you can synchronize it with the rest of your system. This gives you access to over 16.8 million colors, and you can do all of the usual patterns. So let's go through some of them now. Taking it beyond kind of the usual lighting effects, you can also put things into zones. So you can have your W, A, S and D keys, or even your function keys. You can basically separate things out. And another cool thing kind of on top of that is that you can actually record the hardware stats and use the colors to represent how much you use a particular set of keys. Again, just maybe giving you the upper edge when you're trying to play these games and wondering why everyone's just so much better than you. Now in terms of the ergonomics, the keyboard is pretty much what you're going to expect. It is a full-size keyboard at the end of the day. The number pad is kind of where you expect it to be. I guess the only kind of real difference with this is that oversized control key. But after using it for quite a while now, I've actually grown accustomed to it. It kind of feels like that's where it should be on every single keyboard. And like I say, you don't actually kind of have to reach to the windows, reaching over to the control key can sometimes be a little bit tricky, and you can sometimes, I guess, accidentally hit the Windows key. You don't really get that problem anymore, but they still give you the option to actually disable the Windows key anyway. And like I said earlier, this keyboard is aimed at FPS gamers, so for you, you're going to be pleased to know that it has 100% anti-ghosting and N-key rollover. So you can bash this keyboard as much as you want, and it should, in theory, pick up every single keystroke. So this is going to be great for FPS gamers where you're running, jumping and shooting and kind of doing all these different things all at the same time. Now also, as I mentioned earlier, this keyboard, at least the specific sample that we've got, comes with the Cherry MX RGB red switches. Yes, you do get a choice, but I'm actually quite a firm believer in reds being the best. I do actually really like blue, but they're just too noisy for my liking. Speaking of noise, let's check out exactly how this one sounds. Now the last key thing that I want to mention is that obviously this is aimed at FPS gamers, but they try to actually appeal to, I guess, a sort of broader market, and because of that you do still have function keys and multimedia keys, but they're actually the same key. Instead of kind of making the keyboard a lot bigger like we've seen on offerings from Corsair or Razer, instead we just have the same buttons, but you just simply press the function key along with the insert key and it will switch between the two sets of keys. I think this is a much better way of doing it, and will obviously not lead to the likes of accidentally pressing buttons when you're in game or doing something, even on the work side of things. Now, speaking of the work side of things, this was actually really nice to type on. Just doing sort of your average day-to-day typing, it felt like what you'd expect from a Cherry MX switch. When it comes to gaming, I do feel that maybe that control key, gave me a competitive edge. Maybe it's a bit of a kind of placebo effect, but I honestly believe that, yeah, more keyboards need to come out with this oversized control key. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. The only other thing that I really want to sort of mention is the fact that, like I say, in the UK and the US we couldn't really find pricing, but in Europe 180 euros. That's a lot of money for a keyboard. Yes, it's a lot of keyboard, but maybe it's just ever so slightly out, sort of overpriced in my opinion. Again, let me know what you think in the comments section below. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, you know exactly what to do, and I'll see you in the next one. See you later, guys. Bye bye. This is primarily down to the but you do have a choice of obviously going down the route of blue, black, speed, silver. Armory 2 also lets you tune to suit your... Yeah. The Armory 2 software allows you to tune it to suit your needs and your gameplay. So going from... Coing? What the hell is coing? Mapping keys, recording the macro... Quite handy, I'm sure you agree. Did it!
I know.
Now the last kind of key thing that... I've got hair or something in my face.
Key thing.